Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. Now, since it's Christmas in a couple of days, I figured it's time for another kit. So, here we have an HG P407. This is the kit version, which you don't see much of because the RTR is near enough the same price, and it comes with the radio, ESC and servos, so it is a better deal. But the steering servo is a bit weak, the radio gear isn't the best, and the ESC is a bit basic. So I thought since they'd be replaced anyway, we might as well start off with the kit. It's going to be a lot more fun to build too. Lifting off the lid reveals the rather well presented boxes inside. We'll have a look at the manual a bit later with the Toyota decal sheet. Now it's not a kit in the usual sense, rather it's just a load of complete assemblies that just need the final bits doing. It could be a good first time kit build for someone who doesn't like the idea of all the really fiddly bits. The box lid has lots of nice pictures and flavour text. They've done a really good job copying the look and feel of the Tamiya. But we're not really that interested in the box. What we want to see is what's inside. First out is the front axle. Now each of the sub boxes has a nice picture, so you really can't mistake what's inside. The parts come well packed with some good old polystyrene. Probably not the most eco-friendly, but hey ho. And inside is a bag that contains our front axle. The fit and finish is generally very good. The shafts certainly run nicely. You can feel there's some fairly thick grease in there too. The axle has an open diff, but I believe they can be locked with a screw pin much like the high lift, and no doubt the re-released Bruiser from Tamiya, since that's what the kit is closely based on. The next box has the rear axle, which feels just as silky smooth as the front one. I'm suitably impressed. Next up is the gearbox, and unlike most 2 or 3 speed gearboxes, this one only drives the front axles in first, as neatly shown in the illustration. I seem to remember there was a mod for the original Tamiya gearbox that changed that, but I'm thinking in the summer, when the ground dries out and perhaps gets a bit dusty, rear-wheel drive donuts sound like they could be a lot of fun. The gearbox itself feels very nice on the outside, but we can't really get a feel for how the gears feel, as trying to get the clutches to line up without the motor running isn't ideal. Next box then, and we've got the chassis, or if you want its proper name, it's the main axle bracket, but I think we're going to stick with chassis. It's all nicely finished with no bare metal bits hiding away. It's also very square, which makes me think it's been built on a jig. They have used a lot of plain or flange nuts rather than nylocks, and there's no sign of any thread lock, so I'm wondering if there's any chance the fixings might come loose. I think we'll give them the benefit of the doubt for now, and only go back and thread lock them if we need to. Next we've got the wheels and tyres, and as you might expect, they're as good as identical to the Tamiya one-piece ones. They're packed in paper, which is a great little detail. When tyres are packed in plastic, sometimes they can stick themselves together pretty well. In paper, they're kept separated. Very nice. It's a shame they're pre-glued. I've got a set of nice grippy 2.2s I wanted to fit, so we'll either have to find a different set of wheels or try and separate these ones. Big box now, and we've got the body. Now the body bits themselves come in bags, and there's a box at the other end that has all the large parts trees in, and there's quite a few of them. Unlike some of the Chinese bodies, these ones are made from a nice flexible plastic. One of the problems you can get is the plastic can shatter on impact. The interior is quite amazingly garishly orange. The quality of the mould looks just fine though, so with a bit of paint they should look perfectly good. The windows look very nice. There's none of that hall of mirrors effect you get with so many kits, even the brand named ones. Quality stuff. The cab, just like the bed, is nice and flexible. There's very little in the way of moulding flash. With a quick clean-up and paint it should really look the part. The clear parts tree looks pretty good too, except they've painted the rear lenses. Well, I say painted, there's a splodge of red and yellow in roughly the right place, so they're going to need a bit of attention. The grille and bumper look just fine too, all the details are intact, very nice. There's also the LED clips and wipers. Again, the quality is plenty good enough. Now I would say perfect, but we'll wait until they're all mounted up for the final verdict. Here we have the cab extension that goes on the back, coated in a quite ridiculously shiny chrome. While it's finished very nicely, I think we are going to strip it and paint it something a bit less blingy. And in the same bag we've got 2 brackets to mount it to the bed. Next we've got the two halves of the radio box where the servos, receiver and ESC mount, and I think the battery sits on the front too. It's a good example of how nice the parts are. The lid is an absolutely perfect fit, certainly just as good as anything from Tamiya themselves. This bag has the small chrome parts in, like the light buckets and mirrors. Now we might have to change the mirrors to some rubber ones, as the plastic ones will probably snap off before the first run's finished. This big tree is mostly for the bumpers, but there's a few axle mounting bits in there too, along with the steering bell crank. A black plastic parts tree this time. It looks like that might be a battery tray. I'm not sure what the rest of the bits are, and there's also a couple of brackets that are loose in the bag. Some more chrome bits. This one has the rear louver, the side sill protectors, and a couple of number plates around. I'm very impressed with the quality. There's no thin spots in the chrome at all. Also hiding in there is the orange steering column and steering wheel. This leaves just one more box. This one has all the small parts. They're not bagged by sections like a Tamiya kit, but they're all very clearly marked with either a part number or the size of the content. It should be good enough to identify the bits as we're building. Just like the rest of the kit, we've got some complete assemblies in here too. The dampers are all pre-built, but they feel very oily, so I'm guessing they're either not particularly well built or they're just leaky. Now I think it's going to be time for an angle change, as I've well and truly run out of space. The only other thing left in the box is the bag containing the manuals and the decal sheet. The decal sheet is much reduced from the Tamiya kit, and it's got some interesting changes, like the branding being Toyota rather than Toyota. Some of them will come in very useful, I'm sure. The manuals are also quite interesting. There's two of them for a start. One is a quick assembly instruction sheet. It's a small book rather than a sheet though. It contains the reduced instructions for the partially assembled kit. The second is the full instruction manual that goes through the complete build. It's going to be very useful if we need to take things apart later to see how it all went together. Both the manuals are printed on some nice thick glossy paper, and the diagrams are all very clear. At first glance I'd almost go as far as to say it's better than Tamiya's. So that's all that's in the box. Well, I say all, but for just under 160 quid that is a lot of stuff. I think it should be a fun build. There is also, of course, a few bits we need to add, and so far I've got the ESC, which, surprise surprise, is yet another WP1080. It's not too expensive, yet it's nice and configurable for that perfect setup. There's also a couple of servos in the post. Well, one servo, another 20 kilogram waterproof one for the steering, and we're going to use an old Traxxas one for the gear shift. For the receiver, we will use a 6-channel FlySky, so we've got a couple of 3 channels to control some lights. So that's what the contents of the box looks like. Next time we'll have to make a start on the build. I'm thinking it should be a very quick assembly job, assuming there's no showstoppers. But looking at the parts here, I think it should all go together without any issues. Right, I hope you all have a good Christmas, equivalent, or just a good weekend, and of course a Happy New Year. As always, thanks for watching, like if you liked, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment if you got something to say. Bye guys!